Hi everybody, it's Miss Amy and I'm here to bring you Chapter 8 of Lynn Reed Banks, The Return of the Indian. Chapter 8 is called The Operation. If you remember from last time we read together, Omri and Patrick got their hands on a matron, a higher up nurse, and they were bringing back Sammy, who's no longer with us. They were bringing back his medical bag to see if they could operate on Little Bear. And so remember, boys and girls, Miss Amy doesn't own the rights to this book. I just own this book, and I'm glad I get to share it with you. So let's go ahead and open this book, because Miss Amy sure wants to know if it all worked out or not. Whoop, whoop. All right. You're brilliant, breathed Patrick as Omri delicately picked up the tiny objects with his free hand. He overturned one of the boxes in which the plastic figures had been stored, spread Kleenex on it, and set the bag in the middle. Matron bustled over with a swish of starched apron. She started a little at the sight of the battered old bag, but not half as much as she did when she opened it. She fairly reeled back. Now remember, the matron is from a completely different time than Sammy was. And she isn't a doctor, but, you know, she has confidence that she can do it. I know lots of nurses that are highly intelligent and probably can do a lot of the things that our doctors can do. In fact, that's why they go to school and further their training to be nurse practitioners. So anyways, the nurse probably looked at it, not because so much that she was worried that she couldn't do it in general, but that she couldn't do it with these old tools. So anyways, moving on. Are you seriously suggesting that I pull bullets out of a man's back with his antiqued collection of museum pieces? She almost shrieked. Are they so very different from what you use today? Asked Omri desperately. Matron gingerly plucked in a tiny hypodermic syringe from the bag and held it up like a dead rat between her fingers and thumbs. Look at it. Just look at it, I ask you. Matron, Omri said earnestly, you don't seem to understand. That's all there is. It's the best we can manage. If you can't do it, he'll die. Our friend, please. All we ask is you try. Matron gave Omri an enigmatic look. Then she took hold of Tommy's bag and briskly emptied it on the padded table. All sorts of microscopic things came out. The boys could just make out the rolls of bandages, dressings, dark bottles, and instruments packed in the flat cases. She examined these very minutely and then straightened up and said, of course, this is some kind of nightmare. But even in nightmares, it is my policy to do my best. That should be our policy all the time, boys and girls, shouldn't it? Omri and Patrick clutched each other. You mean you'll do it? If you can provide me with an operating table, a bright light, some disinfectant, and a strong cup of tea. That's the second time she's asked for that strong cup of tea. Tea to her must be like coffee to Miss Amy. Omri could and did provide all those things. By this time it was 1 o'clock in the morning and the whole household was fast asleep. But he tiptoed downstairs and fetched disinfectant, cotton, some clean handkerchiefs, and an electric kettle full of boiling water. That's an awful lot for her. Maybe he wanted some too. He also detached the cap from the tube of the toothpaste and washed it out. That was for a mug. Then he made some strong tea with the tea bag and added milk and sugar. He hoped she took sugar. He carried all this on a tray upstairs very quietly. When he returned to his room, Patrick had fixed up the box as an operating table. Omri's bedside lamp, which had a flexible neck and a 100-watt bulb, his mother had a thing about reading in bad lights, had been moved onto the chest. The light shone straight down on the table, making no shadows. There was Kleenex spread everywhere. It looked very hygienic. Little Bear had already been laid on the table, and Matron, armed with a tiny pair of scissors, was soon cutting up the handkerchief to make a surgical gown for herself and an operating sheet for Little Bear. "I shall need an assistant," she said briskly. "What about the Indian girl?" "She doesn't speak much English." "We'll see. She looks bright enough." She beckoned Bright Stars, who was already at her elbow. "How?" she said in a loud voice. Bright Stars looked puzzled. "When I point, you give." Matron went on. Bright Stars nodded intently. "You say, I do." Omri was directed to pour a drop of disinfectant and some of the boiling water into a small tin lid Patrick has prized off a box of candy drops. I don't know what candy drops are. The water turned white. Matron dropped the instruments in, and after some moments poured the liquid into another lid. Meanwhile, Omri was dripping up a few drops of tea into the toothpaste cap. "Ah, thank you, dear," she said when she saw it. She seemed quite cheerful now. She picked up the cap in both hands. It was to her almost the size of a bucket. Sounds like my coffee cup. No, just kidding. But she drank most of it at one go and smacked her lips. "That's more like it. What spinach is to Popeye, tea is to me. Now then, let's get on with it. If boys and girls, you've never seen Popeye, he's a sailor man. Popeye the Sailor Man, he like powered up, kind of like Mario and Luigi with mushrooms or fireballs. He powers up with spinach. So she's saying that this tea is going to power her up, which is exactly what Little Bear and Omri need. The boys saw very little of the operation itself. The light shone straight down on the white-covered table. Matron stood with her back to them, working silently. Every now and then she would point at something on the tray. Bright Stars would swiftly pick it up and hand it to her. Only once or twice did she fumble, and then Matron would snap her fingers impatiently. For a long time there was not a sound except the occasional stamp of the pony's feet or the clank of metal. Then Matron said, "I do believe we're in luck." The boys, who had been afraid to come too close, though Matron had made them both tie handkerchiefs around their faces, leaned forward. There's a lot of people walking around with handkerchiefs on their faces these days, isn't there? Everybody protecting themselves from COVID-19. Can you tell my tank top's bothering me a little bit? Actually, it's a dress, but anyway, sorry, boys and girls. Just being who I am. Okay. La, 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 la. Lost my place, which is normal. Okay. One ball went in one side. One ball? One ball. Oh. One ball went in one side and straight out the other. Missed his lung by a hairbreadth. I'm thankful to say I've patched that up as best as I could. Now I'm playing hide and seek with the other one. Okay, so the ball she's discussing or talking about is obviously the bullets. I think it's lodged against his shoulder blade. Not far in. I think I got it. Yes! She made a sharp movement and then held up a minute pair of tweezers. Whatever they held was far too small to see, but the tips were red and Omri shuddered. Matron dropped the bit of metal into the tray with a ping. Suddenly, she began to laugh. I know a couple people who wouldn't be laughing at the sight of blood. They'd be passing out. But that's why she's a nurse. Whatever would St. Thomas's surgical staff say if they could see me now, she gurgled. She must have been proud of herself. That's good to be proud of herself. Will he be okay? Omri asked breathlessly. Oh, I think so. Yes, indeed. He's a very lucky lad. Is your Indian friend? Oh, he's a very lucky lad, is your Indian friend. We're all lucky to have found you, said Omri sincerely. Matron was stripping the wrapper off a large field dressing. First World War dressings, she was murmuring. Amazing how they've lasted, as if they were made last week. She indicated to Bright Stars that she should help her apply it to the little bear's back. Then they bandaged him between them, and after that she wiped her perspiring face on a scrap of cotton. You can turn the light off now, she said. Whew, I'm hot. Her towering cap was collapsing like an ice palace, but she didn't seem to care. Any more tea? What an experience. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. Always thought I could do simple ops as well as any of those fat cats. Oh dear, what am I saying? And she chuckled. And again at her own disrespect to professional etiquette. After swigging down another bucket of tea and making sure Bright Stars had some too, she checked Little Bear's pulse, gave Bright Star some simple instructions, and then said, Gentlemen, I think, if you don't mind, I'd better be getting back to St. Thomas's. Goodness alone knows how they're coping without me. I'm afraid the unthinkable has happened, and I have fallen asleep on duty. I will simply never lay down. She shook her hands with Bright Stars and gave her a pat on their shoulder, oddly, but on her stomach. Take care of your husband, she said, and take care of yourself, too. Bright Stars looked shy. And you'll have a nice surprise for him if he doesn't come too very soon. Then she waved at the boys, straightened her Wilton cap, and hiking up her skirt over her black stockings, clambered back into the cupboard. When she'd gone, Omri watched Bright Star settling down at Little Bear's side. He was still lying on the table, warmly wrapped up and sleeping soundly. What did she mean about a surprise? He asked Patrick, who was yawning hugely. Oh, come on. Didn't you notice? Notice what? Her big belly. She's going to have a baby. A baby? Wow, that'll be great. Are you nuts? That's all we need. Indian women manage by themselves, said Omri, who'd read about it. They don't make any fuss, not like our mothers. I should think any mother'd make a fuss if she'd had to. Have you, said Patrick. Where do I kip? I don't know what kip means. I'm going to have to look that one up. Omri was beginning to feel exhausted too, but it seemed heartless to go to sleep. Do you think we should? She said he'd be quite okay. She told Bright Stars what to do. There's not much we can do anyway. Look, can I just put these cushions on the floor? I'm knackered. So I'm thinking kip is like, where do I put my stuff up to sleep? Where do I sleep? In 3 minutes, he was flat out. It took Omri a little longer. He crouched by the chest and stared at Little Bear and Bright Stars. She must be tired too, especially considering. Do you need anything, Bright Stars? Something to eat? She raised her tired eyes to him and gave a little nod. I'll get you something, he whispered. Down he went once again. He didn't turn on lights this time. The reflection from the kitchen light could be seen in his parents' bedroom. He had no desire to explain to anyone what he was doing up at such an hour. The light from the street lamp was enough to show him cake, bread, butter. What was that? Something had gone past the window. He'd seen it out the corner of his eyes. He froze. He could have sworn it was a man's head. When he could unfreeze, he went to the window and looked out. All he could see was Kitsa sitting on the sill, which would have settled the matter except for one thing. Her head was up, her ears were pricked, and not at Omri, but the other direction. Omri climbed the stairs with the food, feeling more than a little uneasy. It seemed to him, one reflection, that the head he had seen had shone in the street lamp as if it had no hair. Well, boys and girls, that is the end of chapter 8. We're going to have to wait and see who is outside, if they even tell us. I am so glad that Little Bear is going to be okay. And I sure hope that Bright Stars, her little baby coming, and Omri and Patrick get some good night's rest. So if you're watching this, I hope you get some good rest tonight. Good night and sleep tight.